Obviously, in the previous thing I have said, we want to take the replica of production site. I will explain you why I have said that word, but performance testing can be done at 3 types of phases. We can done at development phase, at design phase, and deployment phase. If you go for the software development life cycle, like requirements gathering, analysis, planning, after that what we have analyzed we want to implement, test, and after it will go to deployment. And in the design phase also we can do performance testing. There is lot, if you go for the e-commerce side, there is lot of images and lot of certain things which will be there like HD images. We want to calculate the response time of how much time that the image, HD image is taking to load. And coming to the development phase, there are so many breakpoints in the code. There is so much amount of unnecessary code. We the performance testers want to deeply analyze and tell to the developers and recommend to the developers. And coming to the deployment, obviously the deployment means it consists of not only software, it also consists of hardware. In the deployment phase, we look at the hardware and software requirements of the system, but practically in the real time, we will take the replica of production system because the client or customer doesn't have enough budget to do all these things. If you go for a performance testing from the initial phases and the application is unstable, then we will not get the accurate results. If you won't get the accurate results, then if you do testing on that, it's very unnecessary thing for the customer and he may lose certain amount of budget. That's why customer initially goes for the development of the product. After he will do the testing like functionality testing of the product, and once the build is stable, then only he will come to the performance testing. And what are the different types of transactions we want to do performance testing? Okay, we have learned what is performance testing and we have learned why we want to do performance testing now, and I am going to say what are the transactions we want to take. Let me take an example of Flipkart. So many people, what they will do initially, there will be some transactions like search, add to cart. After adding to cart, if you want to buy, what you will do, you will log into the system, you will give shipping address, then you will go for some payment transactions. I am noting the same, what you will do, the transactions. One is, if you go for, if you take an e-commerce application, one thing is search, and the second thing is add to cart, and the third thing is login. If you want to buy the product, you want to log in. After that, payment area, whether it is PayPal or some payment integration. These are the typical transactions which are there in a e-commerce site. Generally, we will take care of high critical transactions. High critical transactions. What is meant by high critical transactions or high frequency transactions? If a person came to the e-commerce application, whether if he want to buy the product, then only he can add the product, log in and do payment. But so many people, they will go to the website and they want to surf the product. If they like the product, then only they will do the activities. If they don't like the product, simply they will search for the product and come out of the application. That's why whatever the frequent critical transaction for the Flipkart application is search. That's why we want to do high critical transactions here. We want to give priority to the high critical transactions. What is the high critical or high frequency transactions of Flipkart? Search is the high critical or high frequency transactions. And next, we want to do for mission critical transactions. What is meant by mission critical? If we won't log in, you are not supposed to do the payment or buy the product. Until unless you log into the system, you are not supposed to do this. This is called a mission critical transactions. And the certain things like database transactions, if you go to the shop site, if you go searching something like example shirts, after searching that, every database, from the database we are getting some things. Okay, those things are getting from the database. The things are transactions are called as update transactions or read or write transactions. Read or write transactions means if you are giving a keyword and clicking on enter, at the back end some of the things are to be triggered and we will get the relevant data on the top of the UI. But these transactions called write transactions of the database, and update transactions means if there is something we want to give discounts on the price, some developer will change that, and obviously it is goes to the production also. And what we are dealing, we are not dealing with the functionality, right? What we are dealing is how much time it is taking to for the search operation, how much time it is taking for add to cart operation, how much time it is taking for login and doing payment. And after final, we will integrate all these transactions and we will calculate to one transaction called buying product. By using the tools, we will calculate all the transaction times taken for individual transactions. We will group all the transactions to a product, and finally we will explain or give recommendations to the customer about these transactions. And as I said, where to perform, in the previous examples I said we want to do the replica of client production environment. Okay, this is the examples for this. And as I said, what is performance testing in the initial classes? If it is meeting the speed, scalability and stability of the system, then we can say the performance system is compliant. And the metrics are, as I said initially, client side and server side. In the client side, response time and throughput. In the server side, CPU, memory, network and disk. There the response time is this, how much time it is taking for responding, and the resource utilization means these are all called the resource utilizations, means these are the resources, CPU. If you are accessing an application, if you go to the system task manager, I am going to show that. If you right click and click on start task manager, you can see the process here. These are all the process. If you click on the tab like performance, you can see the CPU usage, memory usage. Here you can see the network usage. Okay, if you click on resource monitor, you will get to know how many processors and what is the resource utilization it is taking. You can see the disk, okay, the network, and now image is going to take more amount of time, that's why, and the memory, if there is any things or not. These are the resource utilization metrics. And I said about response time. Response time means there are two types of response time. One is page response time and the second one is turnaround response time. Turnaround response time is whenever you are sending a request and you are getting a response. If you sum up of sending a request and getting the response, it is called as turnaround response time. If you are checking only the how much time taken for loading the page only, it is called as page response time. Let me take an example for this. We are sitting here and typing a URL like www.flipkart.com, and it is transferring to the immediately there are certain things like DNS, domain name system. It converts the IP address into a name format like a Flipkart, then it goes through a firewall. After firewall there will be some certain servers like web server, application server and database server. Okay, if there is any static data, then it will be covered in web server. if there is any dynamic data, the web server will drag from the application server and will give it to the client. And some of the transactions which are stored in the database, the web server directly interacts with the database server and gets the data from it. Okay? This is the application flow. We are typing the Flipkart, then it is going to DNS server. From the DNS it is going to web server. If there is static data, it is getting from web server. If there is dynamic data, it is getting from the application server. If there is any data related to database, it is going to the database server and getting all the data. This is a request flow. That's why if you want to calculate the response time, you want to calculate the client time, DNS time, web server time, app server time and database time. If you sum up all these things, then we can want to calculate the response time. After that, resource utilization, as I said, memory, CPU, hard disk and network. These are the main resources which we want to concentrate. And next, coming to throughput, there are two types of definitions of throughput. One type of definition is number of requests transferred within 1 second or 1 minute is one of the definition, and the second definition is number of bytes downloaded from the server. Okay, there are two types of definitions. One definition is number of requests per second is one definition, and the second definition is number of bytes downloaded. Number of requests per second means if 100 requests, 100 users are sending the request in 1 second, then the throughput is 100 per second. Okay? This comes under this definition, and we are sending a request of www.google.com. What we are getting? We are getting a search box with two buttons like I'm feeling lucky and Google search, right? Background, if you can see, there is so much amount of data which is loaded, that is called as number of bytes loaded. If you open the browser, you will get to know all these things. I can say the definitions of throughput is number of requests, right? As I said, if 100 number of users are transferring the request, means then the throughput will be 100 per second. And the second thing is number of bytes downloaded. In the number of bytes downloaded, if you are entering the URL of www.google.com on the web browser, you are getting a page like google.com page with a search box and two buttons here, Google search and I am feeling lucky. These are all the data which is sent from the server. What is the flow? Client www.google.com. He will send the request to DNS server. These are all the background process which we won't see, but practically these are all the things which will happen. From the DNS server, it will goes to a firewall. From the firewall, here there are components. Web server, application server, and database server. These all things are discussed, but practically I am showing the approach now. As I said, this is the request flow. We are typing and converting to IP address. From the firewall, it is going to the web server. If it is the static data like Google Pages, it will transfer to the client, or else it will interact with the app server and gets the dynamic data. It will go to the client. What is the static data and dynamic data here? The google.com page is very static, and the dynamic data means if you want to search for some search results. Like if you search for JMeter and clicking on search button, you will get dynamic results, and there are some search engine optimization techniques. By using that, we will get some results according to the page ranking mechanisms. And if there is any data which is stored in database, it will interact with the database, and those things will be displayed at the client side. Okay, and this is about the request flow from the client to the server. And now I am going to explain about so many people misconceptions that performance testing can be done manually or automation. This is $1 million question for all the members, that is performance testing comes under a manual testing, or is performance testing comes under automation testing. I will explain you how to do performance testing manually and how to do performance testing by using some automation tools. Manually, if we take a stopwatch, in nowadays every smartphone or mobile phone consists of stopwatch, or there is some dialer of a stopwatch. Take that stopwatch, click on the application and immediately click on the stopwatch button, then you can calculate the time taken for loading the page. Okay, what is the process? Take a stopwatch and just click on the application. When the application loaded, immediately click on the stopwatch, then you will get the time taken for loading the page. This is done manually. But why you are not supposed to do manually? Because performance testing is not all about single user or 2 users. When 100 users, when 1,000 users fall on the system, what is my response time? What is my throughput? What is my resource utilization? That's what we want to calculate. That's why performance testing is not done manually, it is done automatically. If you see this figure, and I am going to say one more thing on limitations of manual testing. If you see that girl, he is saying to the testers, these are all the testers which you are sitting, means as I said, performance testing is not by one user. We want to go ahead for hundreds and thousands of users. He is saying, like all the members are clicking on mouse at the same time, go click once, then all the members are clicking on the site and they are attacking the app server and database server. But it is taking so much, not taking same time. All the users may not log in into the same time at the same level. That's why performance testing manual limitations are, it is very expensive. How can I say expensive? If you are using the resources like human power, if you are using hundreds and hundreds of human users, then there will be very higher cost, right? We want to pay each and every member. And moreover, all the members cannot click on the website at the same time. And these are all the main limitations of manual testing. That's why with the help of some tools, we are going to do performance testing. What the tool will do? In the tool, we'll record the application and we'll store it as a script. After that, we'll use some tools. By using some tools, we can pump the virtual users. What is virtual users? Virtual users are imaginary users which act like real-time users. We'll pump the virtual users with the help of a tool. Then all the virtual users will attack the application, and tool will calculate the metrics like response time and throughput, and about tool will calculate the resource utilization. By using these tools automatically, by in the automation, we will get rid of human power. We can gain the large number of scenarios. Okay, these are the main advantages. That's why performance testing, it is advised to do by using some automation tools than by using some manual. This is how we can do in the automation. If we can see this approach, initially from the virtual user, the load is generated. From the controller, it is attacking the application, and the analysis is to be stored in some pictures and graphs and some table format which contains of all these metrics. And finally, these metrics are to be stored in our we can store the reports in a Microsoft Excel or Word, and some other commercial tools they had inbuilt reporting mechanism. We can export to Excel, we can export to Microsoft Word. That's why we will choose automation. These are all the benefits of automation. We can see we can replace the number of human power, we can do the tests very quickly, we can automate the tests because the machines don't commit mistakes like humans. And coming to what are the different types of tools available in market. Okay, now we have said performance testing can be done in automation. And now I am going to explain about what are the different types of tools available in market. There are two types of categories of tools. One is open source tools and the second one is commercial tools. In the open source tools you can find JMeter, OpenStack, Grinder. These are all the major tools. Whereas in the commercial space you can find LoadRunner, Silk Performer, NeoLoad, and there are some other tools we can do performance testing. And what is the main difference between open source and commercial? Coming to open source, what you want to do is you don't want to pay any amount to the developer person. Since it's an open source, we can use that as a free of cost. But whereas commercial, we want to pay some money if you want to use the resources of that tool. Okay, this is the main difference between open source and commercial. Open source means free of cost and commercial means we want to pay some money. And in the open source area, JMeter plays a very crucial role, and in the commercial space, LoadRunner is playing a crucial role. Over 60% of market is leading by LoadRunner now, and rest of the percentage is done by the other ones. And since we have discussed about performance testing, so many people they are confused that there is a concept of performance engineering. Performance testing and performance engineering are both are different. What is the difference is here performance testing means we want to calculate the response times, throughputs and the server side metrics. And whereas in the performance engineering what we will do is we'll take all these metrics which are there in performance testing and we'll club together and do analysis and do fine tuning the system. What we'll do fine tuning the system means we'll sit together like performance tester, database tester and network person and functional tester, developer and customer. All these people will sit together and they will do analysis and fine tune the systems. All the people will give recommendations like you want to do code optimization, we want to do optimization of the database, and the queries are taking so much amount of time. Okay, these are all the things we want to do and fine tune the system, and we want to make the system as robust. This process is called as performance engineering. On a single note, I can say performance testing means to get the metrics like response time, throughput and resource utilization metrics, and performance engineering is analyzing and fine tuning and optimizing the system to make the system robust and performance compliant is called performance engineering. And this is the JMeter tool advantages and disadvantages. We'll cover this in detail when we are going ahead for JMeter classes.